So 2024, 11 marathons in about 10 months, give or take. It was a very busy year, lots of ups and downs, lots of highs and lows, lots of trials, tribulations, and lots of medals and mountains and mayhem involved. So this is just a very brief recap, about 2 minutes per marathon for every marathon I did back in 2024. So let's get into it. So 11 marathons in about 10 months. Remember, I'm doing all of this for Young Lives versus Cancer. This is a charity that's close to my heart. That's all about helping young lives, literally children or young adults and teenagers with cancer or leukemia. It helps them, and of course, it helps their families get through those troubled times. The link is in the post. If you feel like donating even just £1 or £5, euro, dollar, please do. It's all going to a very, very good cause, and as I say, it's a charity close to my heart. So those 11 marathons were run in respect to Young Lives versus Cancer. I wear the same vest every time. Just leaning down to get it. It looks like that. You probably recognize it from lots of my videos, and it's one that's been well worn. I've got a couple, so don't worry, I do put them through the wash. And it's a case of just going through these marathons. Now, these marathons, if you've got any interest in marathons or half marathons, most of the cities I'll be highlighting will talk about both marathons. They also do half marathons, generally at a different time of year or close to the marathon time. So it's an outlook, it's a perspective on the marathon, the flavor, the perspective of both me as a runner and of the organizers, and of course the city, the culture, the history, etc., etc. These marathons are all very different. One thing that of course remains the same, with the exception of ultras, is the distance. All marathons are 42.2k or 26.2 miles. So that doesn't change. What changes is how well they're serviced. For example, number of aid stations, the type of course. Is it flat? Is it fast? Is it undulating? Is there a massive elevation gate or vertical, or vert as they call it? Is it trail? Is it road? Is it asphalt, tarmac, loose surface, sand? All of the above mixed into one. There is one of those, by the way. So each one of them has its own unique, distinct flavor. So the idea of this short video, as I say, about a couple of minutes on each marathon, is just to give you, honestly, just a snapshot of each marathon. Because if I went into detail, we could spend at least 30 minutes per marathon, and that's not the purpose of this video. It is now very early January 2025. I've got one more to do, which is the Arc of Attrition. It's going to be freezing cold on the very famous coastal path in Cornwall. It is at the end of January, so about two and a half weeks from today, and it's expected to be cold, very windy, very blustery, with a huge amount of kit and a lot of kit requirements, obviously by UTMB now, as it was bought by UTMB earlier this year. But before we get into all of that, that's another video for another time at the end of this month. Let's get into the very first marathon, which I did last year, 2024, which was Seville. So starting off with the Seville Marathon, there's the medal, fantastic marathon, all told, just a beautiful setting. So I like to know a little bit about all the cities I go to, just because it's interesting, and if I'm traveling there, I may as well know a couple of facts. Seville, very well known, it's the birthplace of flamenco in the whole of Spain. I went to see a show, fabulous, well recommended. The biggest Gothic cathedral in Europe, as far as I understand, also well worth seeing. It's the resting place and tombstone of Christopher Columbus, of course, in Seville, and very famous for his operas. No guesses for this one. The Barber of Seville, of course, one of the famous operas, and Carmen. And as far as the marathon is concerned, yeah, I would describe it in 3 words: as fast, scenic, and historic. Beautiful route, Oranges lining a lot of the streets, just fresh oranges just growing on the streets. Ideal weather conditions, sort of southwest Spain, almost in Portugal. Lovely weather conditions, around about 23, 24, 5 degrees. Rich Andalusian experience, that's both the culture and the cuisine. And as I say, go and catch a show like the flamenco. It's very inexpensive, and have some decent food while you're there. Tapas, really well worth it. So Seville, I would give it a good solid 9 out of 10 on a ranking scale of 1 to 10. So 9 out of 10 for Seville for me. So marathon number 2 in 2024, the Barcelona Marathon. Fantastic marathon. I really enjoyed Barcelona. Not as pretty, as it were, as Seville. It's further, obviously, east as opposed to southwest with Seville. Barcelona, of course, famous for its historical buildings, the Gaudi Museum, the galleries, massive football stadium if you're into that. Also, one thing I didn't know, it had man-made beaches, which was a shock and a surprise to me. Man-made beaches because they were created for the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. So a couple of facts I didn't know, a bit of trivia. As far as the marathon was concerned, yeah, beautiful. I would describe it in 3 words as historic, iconic route. You go past the Sagrada Familia, which is that huge, huge cathedral still being built, and I don't think it'll ever stop being built. Well worth seeing. The Arc de Triomphe, which is a smaller version of the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, but you run through that on the way to the finish line, a bit like the Brandenburg Gates in Berlin. Mediterranean climate is superb, of course. The food is lovely, and it's got a very global sort of participation, as I understand it, from over 100 countries. And would you believe, from 3:57 in Barcelona, I dropped about 15 minutes, and I ended up with a 4 hours and 11 minutes race. Marks out of 10 for me, I would put Barcelona around about a 7 out of 10, as opposed to 9 out of 10 for Seville. Paris Marathon, here we go. And we're off. So, marathon number 3, the Paris Marathon, with this very, very distinctive medal. It's engraved on the inside there. I don't know if you can see that. And it's got a very distinctive ribbon too. The Paris Marathon, well, what can I say about Paris that you don't already know? Obviously, it's a very rich culture full of cafes and bars and bistros, very chic areas to be in, nightlife, museums, galleries, you name it. From, the Montmartre to Sacré-Cœur to all kinds of different places I'm sure you already know. As far as the marathon was concerned, very big one last year, 2024, because obviously they had the Olympics hosted by Paris in 2024. So there was a big, huge sporting event anyway. And then, of course, the marathon itself on April the 7th, which preceded the Olympics. But it was gaining a lot of momentum because you could see the iconic symbols and pictures and posters everywhere when you were there. So it was really a good year to do it, actually, while they were hosting the Olympics. What can I say about it? Well, there was 55,000 runners, and it actually topped the charts in terms of the biggest marathon to date on April 7th, 2024. Then it was superseded later. But big international marathon. I would call it regimented, landmarks, and cool. That would be the 3 words I would describe it at. Regimented because it's not as loose and as easygoing as the Spanish ones. There's a lot more structure to it. Landmarks because you do honestly go past most of the landmarks in Paris. The Louvre, the Eiffel Tower. You start on the Champs-Élysées. You go past Notre Dame. You go through past the Arc de Triomphe. Lots, and of course along the Seine River. So lots and lots to see and film if you're going along there. It's not flat. That's one thing I would definitely say. You go through the park area, east of Paris, through the rural areas, and then back into the city centre later. About 440 meters elevation gain, which is not insignificant. That is definitely not a flat marathon. Out of 10, I would give that again another 7 out of 10 for me. Well worth it. I would recommend it. It's a lovely city, of course. I'm sure you already know that. And well worth doing the marathon there if it's one that you want to do in Northern Europe. So So the UTS 50, the Ultra Trail Snowdonia, which is this iconic medal, which was very hard work, I have to say. Part of the UTMB series, UTS 50 I did, which ended up being about 57 kilometers. Starts in the beautiful, beautiful village of Llanberis in North Wales, in the heart of Snowdonia. Fabulous place to be and an absolutely stunning scenery around there. One of my favorite places to be and my go-to relaxing place. But the UTS itself, well, one of the most challenging. Technically, it's over a marathon, obviously 57 kilometers as opposed to 42. Challenging mountain terrain. The elevation gain for this one over about 57k was 3,500 meters, which is give or take 10,000 feet. Over 55k, give or take. So very steep, both ascents and descent. It really was a quad killer, especially on the way down. I don't mind climbing. I'm actually quite strong in the climbs. I suffer on the downhills. Flats, no problem. It's the downhills and the descending, which really does affect my quads. Spectacular scenery. I should have stopped and taken more pictures while I was there, but I seemed to be on a mission just to get to the finish. I did finish, which I was really pleased about. I got an hour. I got 12 hours and 40 minutes for that marathon, that ultra marathon. The cutoff was 14, so I was well within the cutoff. So I was really pleased about that. Very prestigious, part of the UTMB series, well worth it. It's an idyllic setting in North Wales, in Llanberis. If you want to do an ultra in the UK, that's definitely one that I would highly recommend. So marathon number 5, and that's the D-Day landings, Marathon Liberté. So marathon in Normandy, beautiful northern France. It's to commemorate 1944 to 1924. So this was actually the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings, and you just felt part of a much bigger historical event. And as such, it was well worth doing 2024. Historic, varied, and community feel is the way I would describe the marathon. It was part of this Remembrance Festival, as I said. It ended in the beautiful city of Caen, C-A-E-N, northern France and Normandy. City of 100 bell towers, literally 100 churches with 100 bell towers. The marathon itself, yeah, tribute to history as much as anything else. You go along Juno Beach, which is where the landings took place, and about 30,000 runners apparently for the 5, 10k, half marathon, children's races, as well as the full marathon. The marathon itself was quite small, 3,000 or 4,000 runners as opposed to 55,000 in Berlin and Paris. But had a nice community feel about it, but not flat, and about 200 meters elevation, 250 meters of elevation. And this one I did struggle. I got 4 hours and 55, so that's a slow marathon for me. And I struggled because I didn't anticipate the terrain. Varied, grass, mud, sand, gravel, asphalt, stony even in some places. And I wasn't that well prepared for this particular one. So would I recommend it? Yes. The one that we did on the 80th anniversary probably had a little bit more pomp and ceremony about it. The ending was fantastic. We finished in this sports stadium in Caen, which was beautiful. You actually ran around the track to finish and go through the finish line, get your medal and so on. Well worth it from that perspective. If you like a varied marathon with about 250 meters of elevation, cheap, inexpensive, northern France, well worth it. Recommended. For me, a 7 out of 10. So we go. New first marathon. It's going under the start bridge.
Okay, this is a big little wave. Well done, everybody. Good stuff.
So fast forward, obviously D-Day landings was on the 2nd of June. Fast forward to the New Forest Marathon, marathon number 6 of 2024. And this is the medal you get. It's a very eco-friendly marathon, which is very environmentally friendly. The marathon itself, well organized like the others. It takes place in the New Forest, of course, in the south of the UK near Southampton on September the 8th. So I had a good, decent summer break, as it were. The marathon, beautiful semi-trail, I would say about 2/3 road, 1/3 trail. Beautiful, undulating through the forest, absolutely stunning. It is a national park, of course, full of wildlife, deer, the very famous New Forest ponies, It's a plastic-free event, you know, so it's very eco-friendly, a festival atmosphere. The start was fantastic. We had sort of singing and dancing along with the DJ at whatever clock it was, 7 or 8 a.m. Too early to be dancing, but it was great fun. And then off we went. Unfortunately on that day, or fortunately actually, it absolutely started bucketing down about 30 seconds after the start. So we just got drenched right from the beginning. But actually, that's probably the best way to do it. And then we just ran the whole marathon. Now, I got a 3:55 for that one, my fastest marathon last year. Considering I just ran a 4:55, I managed to chop off a whole hour of a marathon time just with the summer break. So I think rest and recovery had a lot to do with that. More of that on another video. But to chop off a whole hour in the space of 2 marathons, it was significant. And it also got me thinking about the, you know, the sort of training regime I have, as well as the recovery and rest regime that I have. So well worth it. I'd give that a good 8 out of 10. If you wanted to do a UK-based marathon in a beautiful setting, extremely well organised, yes, for sure. The New Forest Marathon, 8th of September last year. Berlin Marathon 2024, here we go. On the start line, fantastic, here we go. So marathon number 7, the Berlin Marathon. What a marathon. I mean, it's fantastic. There's the iconic medal from this year. Here we go. That's the back of it. I got a 3:57 this year. Last year, so I was really happy with that. My 3rd sub 4 in 7 marathons. So I was very pleased with that. Now it's an iconic, I would describe it as iconic, fast and flat. Of course, you start right there at the Tiergarten on that huge avenue that leads on to the Victory Monument. And then of course you go past some historic buildings, the Reichstag, and of course the end, the finish line is going through the Brandenburg gates, and just beyond that is the finish line. Fantastic marathon, really worth it. 55,000 runners. It just stole the accolade from Paris by a couple of hundred more participants than Paris. Paris was already huge, if you remember, in its Olympic year. As far as the marathon's concerned, yeah, it's well organized, classic German sort of organization. I have to say the start at this one is fantastic. It's like a party atmosphere. You have all the DJs and that clapping routine that they have. Well worth it just for that. It's flat, well supported, lots of people cheering. You don't have barriers, that's the only thing I would say, and people do dart across the course in front of you, bicycles, families, and that can get a little bit dangerous, so be aware of that. Other than that, well worth it. Northern Europe, of course, London, and of course Berlin. As far as one of the world marathon majors is concerned, it's well worth doing. Now of course there are 7, which includes Sydney, but sort of a local-ish if you're in the UK, London or Berlin. Berlin is easier to get into as a small tip. Well worth it. Culturally significant, historically significant, full of museums and galleries, and lots to see and do in Berlin. Marks out of 10 for me, a solid 8 out of 10. We'll do it again, yes. Chicago Marathon 2024. First and the last. Nice and cool. So the Chicago Marathon, for me, October 13th last year. There's the medal, fantastic looking ribbon as well. I got a 4:06 for that one. I was again hoping for a sub 4. That would have made 4 sub 4s out of all the marathons. Wasn't to be. That's another story. But October 13th, Chicago last year, fantastic marathon. As I say, a 4:03 finish time, just missing that sub 4 by 3 minutes. Fast, flat and fun. And if you want to do a US-based inexpensive, fun marathon, I would rank it above Boston and New York for sure in terms of cost and access to the marathon. Chicago, of course, well known for its very first skyscraper in the US was Chicago. Deep dish pizzas, not my favorite, I have to say, but it's iconic for Chicago. And of course, the rivers are turned green. As a fun fact, every St. Patrick's Day with green dye that's put into the river to commemorate the St. Patrick's Day tradition since 1962. So would I do the marathon again? Yes, it's a fantastic marathon, wonderful city, windy city, of course, as you all know, full of food and eateries and lots of lovely places to stay. About 2 million spectators. You go through 29 neighborhoods from Hispanic to Chinese to Italian, and it's got that good great vibe about it. Lots of spectators, well supported. For me, 8 out of 10, and yes, I would do it again.
Hey, yeah, all right. Nice to meet you.
Francie.
James.
Thank you, Francie.
Yeah, good, thanks. I thought I might catch you.
So marathon number 9, and this is the ERYRI Marathon, which is otherwise known in English as the Snowdonia Marathon. Not to be confused with the UTS Marathon. That's an ultra. This is a road marathon, so the classic 26.2 miles, and you get one of these. The ERYRI Marathon, it's made from Welsh slate, of course, traditional Welsh slate made in Llanberis, which has the famous slate museum, still being used. It's still a living, working museum, and you can definitely visit it. I would definitely recommend it. It's in the little town of Llanberis, North Wales, one of my go-to favorite places to relax and rest and go and climb and hike the mountains. The marathon itself, massively challenging. It is a road marathon predominantly, with some huge elevation, 1,000 meters or 3,000 feet elevation, breathtaking views, a super iconic scenic route. That's the only way I can describe it. Great, fabulous Welsh hospitality and culture. And as I say, that iconic slate museum, which you get this wonderful medal from. And I got a 4:24 there. So this is October the 20th, nice and cold, coldish for the UK. And I got 4 hours and 42, which I was very pleased with considering we had 1,000 meter elevation. Would I do it again? Absolutely resounding yes. In fact, I have already been entered into the 2025 marathon and been accepted. So I'm well pleased with that. Snowdon's well known for all kinds of stuff. It's got the world famous Slate Museum. It's a national park, well worth going there just for that. The stunning scenery is iconic. And of course the mountain railway, which everybody knows about. And of course, Snowdonia itself, Snowdon, the mountain, is the highest peak in both England and Wales. So from that perspective, well worth visiting. But if you've got to do a marathon there, then I would wholly recommend the ERYRI Marathon. Small, only 3,000 runners, but just brilliant. I would definitely recommend it. I loved every minute of it, and I would do it again, and I am. So I'm really pleased with that. Would I recommend it? Yes. Scores out of 10. Ooh, it's going to be a close 10 out of 10. 9.5, maybe close to 10. I don't know what would make a 10, but this is definitely a solid 9. Here we go. Here comes the start. So marathon number 10 in 2024. By now I'm feeling it, and this sort of cumulative fatigue effect is starting to taking effect. We're now into November the 3rd last year. I managed to get a, crikey, I think it was 4:14 for this one. Sorry, 4:25 for this one. There's the medal. Very colourful, of course, showing off the iconic beaches of Nice in the south of France. So the marathon itself is the Alpes Maritimes marathon, which runs from Nice all the way through to Cannes, 42.2 kilometers. Nice itself is beautiful, of course. You've got the Promenade des Anglais, the old town market, the beaches, all the stalls and monuments. Fantastic place to visit, Nice, at any time of year. The weather's always very good. As far as the marathon itself is concerned, yeah, it's not flat. It's about 250 meters elevation. It's mixed surface partly, but predominantly tarmac and sealed surface. You do run along the beaches. The start is great. You're there on the Promenade des Anglais with those iconic palm trees and very colourful background. It is beautiful with a DJ and the music going. It's an early start, but it's still warm, which is fantastic. And the scenic route all the way through, it really is, but not that well supported. So just something to bear in mind. So I would definitely take headphones for this one. When you finish in Cannes, of course, Cannes, very well known for the Cannes Film Festival, there's a beautiful runners compound at the finish line where you've got all kinds of food and drink, from sandwiches to baguettes to crisps, chocolate, beer. Fantastic. They had a live band there for 3 or 4 hours. Your bag drop off was really easy to pick up your bag, and then you got free transport back to Nice. Would I do it again? Yes. but the score is about a 7 out of 10 because the support wasn't there throughout. And as far as the exhibition is concerned, and some of the shakeout run, the 5K shakeout, wasn't that well organized, but it's still a very good marathon. And if you want to do one in France, it's one of the best ones there, and a lot smaller and easier to get into than, say, for example, Paris. Valencia 2024, we're going, here we go. So the 1st of December 2024, just 4 weeks after the Nice Marathon, on the 3rd of November, I ran the Valencia Marathon. And as you will well recall, it was touch and go whether that was going to go ahead or not, simply because of those horrendous floods that they had. Now, that said, as I say, there was a decision to be made there, and 2 weeks out, they told us that it was going ahead. I think it was the correct decision to make when all said and done, despite all the tragedy, because it reunited the whole town. There was this great sense of community and camaraderie. And of course, every runner that did take place contributed donation-wise to the aid efforts and funding for rebuilding part of the town that was affected by the floods. The marathon itself, yeah, absolutely fast, fun, and I would say PB or PR, depending on where you are in the world. Why? Because most people I speak to, both last year and this year, wanted to go to Valencia to beat their own record. Whether it's sub 3, sub 4, sub 5, it's the place to do it. It is very, very flat. I think there's about 10 meters elevation over 42K, which is basically flat, and it's a fantastic city. It's known as the city of running, or the city of runners, and you can imagine everything is set up for running. Lots of running tracks, the dry riverbed, beautiful tracks. They put kilometer markers all the way through. Day and night you'll see runners running and jogging, and lots of people getting together in groups to run. Fantastic place. It's very cost effective, it's easy to get to, and this one again for me, would I do Valencia again? I would, and I am. I'm already booked on to this one in 2025. It's still a year away, but I'm already booked on it. And inexpensive, easy to get to, and it's one of those iconic marathons that's not a world major, and I'm quite happy it's not a world major because that brings its own problems. Would I do Valencia again? Absolutely. Would I recommend it? Yes, and it's a solid 9 out of 10 for me. So in summary, of course, I set myself a challenge of 12 marathons in 12 months. I've finished 11 marathons already, so I've just got the arc of attrition to come up in 2-3 weeks time. Freezing cold coastal path in Cornwall. That's going to be a challenge in its own right. But what did I learn from the last 11 marathons over roughly 10 months? Well, I've got 7 points that I'd like to share with you, and please, in the comment box, tell me what you learned. These are just my experiences. There are going to be millions of other people's experiences out there, and I would love to hear what you have learned or heard or experienced on your marathons or half marathons or any runs, because each one of them is valuable and each one of them we can all learn from. So for me, personally, first lesson is consistency, the power of consistency. The consistency to get out, for me, 5 or 6 times a week. That drives the discipline to get out, especially when you don't feel like it. That's the hardest part. For me, just getting my kit ready, trainers, socks, underwear, t-shirt, shorts, hoodie, whatever the weather is, ready the night before means that the morning after I will just get into that kit and just go for the run. It's literally just getting over the threshold of the door. Once I'm into the first 5 or 10 steps of the run, I know I'll be okay. But getting out the door is the hard part. And that's what calluses your mind in terms of discipline and consistency. Lesson number 2, mental fortitude comes from the consistency. By being consistent, you just build that resilience, strong resilience, callousing your mind to get out the door. And then as soon as you're running, it's okay. It takes me 2 or 3K to warm up, but then I know I'm on my way, and I'm quite happy then to not run all day, but I could quite easily run 16, 21, 25K without really thinking about it. Now, I never used to be able to, but it's getting out the door that's always the problem. So number one, consistency and discipline, which leads to number two, which, as I say, creates that mental fortitude where you callous your mind and your self-doubt goes down, and your mental strength and fortitude goes up. So that's number two. Number three, rest and recovery. You must rest and recover. And I don't care what that looks like, whether you have a cold plunge or a steam room or a sauna or a massage, whatever it might be. For me, this was dramatically illustrated between the Normandy Marathon, which was the D-Day 80th anniversary marathon, and the New Forest Marathon. Normandy Marathon, 4 hours 55 time. 2 months later, over the summer holiday, where I did have a little bit more time to chill and relax, I cut that marathon time by 1 hour down to 3:55. So a good sub 4, 1 hour cut completely from the last marathon, which is amazing. And I was shocked, frankly, but I felt good on the New Forest Marathon. And marathons are never easy, but that was much easier than the D-Day landings marathon. So for me, rest and recovery was well demonstrated. You must rest and recover, and whether that's food, hydration, flexibility, as I said, sauna, steam room, cold plunge, let your body recover and you will perform better later. So that was So lesson number 4, quite simply this, being adaptable and flexible. So in other words, just adapt to the situation. All marathons are 42.2 kilometers or 26.2 miles. That doesn't change. What changes is the context, the environment. So if you're in the UK and you're doing a UK-based marathon, you've only got to drive an hour. You wake up in your own home, get out your own bed, have your usual breakfast, and get over to the marathon only an hour away, something like that. That's very different to doing what is essentially the same thing, 26.2 miles, in Tokyo or Chicago or New York. Same race, very different context. It costs more, the stress levels are higher, travel can cause stress. It's much more expensive. You don't know what the bed's like, you don't know what the hotel's like, you don't know what the food is like. You've got to arrive 2 or 3 days earlier. All of that changes. So being adaptable and flexible to the situation really does help. Each marathon comes with its own unique set of challenges. They are all different. The distance doesn't change, but the context does. So your energy levels, your sleep, how healthy you are, if you're injury free, how well you've recovered, how well you've tapered. These all have an effect on your performance. So being adaptable, being flexible to the situation is what will help you. In other words, it's already an achievement to be at the start line of a marathon. You've done well just to get there injury free. Now you've just got to run it. So being flexible and adaptable, if you're not feeling 100% or you haven't hydrated well or you haven't slept well, just know that ahead of time and do the best you can given the circumstances you've got. So be flexible and adaptable. Don't be too hard on yourself. Number 5 is just what I would call a deeper connection to your why. Why are you doing this marathon? If you're a one and done sort of person, maybe it's just a bucket list thing that you wanted to tick off. Not a problem. Absolutely fantastic. I totally take my hat off to people to do a marathon. It's not easy. And if you're doing a one and done, I would almost argue that it's harder than doing multiple marathons, because if you're in for multiple marathons, you know what you've let yourself in for. If you're just doing one, it's arguably more difficult. Anyway, know your reason why. So for me, it was for Young Lives versus Cancer, as you know, for the charity that I support for children with cancer. It just gives you some leverage. You've publicized the fact that you're going to do 12 marathons in 12 months all over social media with your work colleagues, your clients. So now you've got to do it. So for me, making it public, not only am I raising very important funds for cancer for children, but it's also keeping me healthy and, reasonably fit over a period of time. Not just for now or next year, but for life. And I've got a whole set of new challenges for 2025 this year. That was number 5. Number 6, the value of your community. I've got 2 running communities, I like to call them, almost 3 I suppose, but 2 definitely. The one is my own local park run where I meet lots of people I know. Some of you might actually be watching this. Hi, if you are. And it's just good fun. You meet up for the park run, there's a bit of banter, there's chatting going on before, during and after the race or the run, and you go for a coffee and a slice of cake. It's fantastic. You get to know people, you chat about all kinds of different things, the running gear, the tech, what flavour cake you're going to have. You're going to have carrot cake today or chocolate cake or nothing because you've got a race coming up. Doesn't matter. The fact is, there's a lot of chat and friendly chit chat with people that you get to know really well. So that's number 1. Number 2, my other community is Caffeine and Cardio, run by the Dugout Cafe Bar in Abergavenny in South Wales. They always put a run on Thursday night and Sunday morning. Whenever I go to South Wales, where my family are based, I will always do a run with them, 5 or 10k on a Thursday and a Sunday morning. That's fantastic. And if you are watching this from Caffeine and Cardio, shout out to you. It's always good fun, and I love running down there in Abergavenny. It's a fantastic place to run. So that's number 6. Value the community. Your friends and people who run have a similar sort of outlook on running and a similar consistency with why they run and the love of running, as it were. So that's fantastic. That community is really important, especially when you're having an off day or you don't feel like it. They really do pick you up. So value the community, number 6. Number 7, I would say, is just celebrate your milestones. And what I mean by that is, once you've run a marathon, it's a huge achievement for most people. You're still much less than 1% of the entire world's population that have run a marathon. If you're running multiple marathons, what I found myself doing, this is a personal perspective, is ticking off the marathons as you go through them almost became routine, until it was pointed out to me that actually, marathons are not easy. They're hard work. So each time you complete one, you should really celebrate not only that milestone that you've done a marathon, but that you've completed a marathon at all. So I'm getting better at that. So celebrate the milestone. So those are 7 lessons that I learned. Consistency and discipline, mental fortitude, so your self-doubt is reduced, rest and recovery, really important, adaptability and flexibility, number 5, creating that deeper connection to your leverage. Why are you doing these marathons or whatever the challenge is? And then, of course, the value of your community. Who do you run with and why? And value the friendship, etc. And number 7, celebrate the milestones. So those are my 7 lessons. If you've got any stories or any contributions or ideas or lessons that you've learned, I would really, really value just dropping them in the comment box. I answer all comments. And I would love to hear, because it builds this community online. And I'd really like to grow this into a sort of self-sustained community that help each other when it comes to any kind of running related topics, ailments, challenges, successes. So in the meantime, run well, run healthy, and I look forward to seeing you either on the road or trail somewhere in person or online through the comments. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.